To the self-aware in the room, you know what motivates you, right? Do other people motivate you? Does money motivate you? Does, the work-life balance? Like, trying to really deeply get into what motivates you is important. But really what the big game is how do you get to the truth? The reason people don't do things is because of the truth. They don't want to face the truth. They don't want to, we trick the living shit out of ourselves. Like, the human brain is gangster, right? Like, it lets us do incredible things. If the day, I got an answer. You know how, like, when you got to college / a little bit older, do you know that real big shift we all went through between high school and then, let's say, whether it was between 16 and 23, like when you're 14 or 15, you can't take any jokes about you. You just don't have your self-esteem up enough, right? You're against it. And then somewhere by 22, you're making jokes about yourself and everything just got a lot better and easier. I'm trying to figure out how to articulate that same business version. I, from the get, knew what I sucked at, knew what I was good at, and didn't care that I sucked at those things and just went. And also knew what I tapped out at, right? Like, I know how I'm gonna buy the New York Jets. Maybe it's gonna be some amazing random woman in San Diego that helps me get it, but that wasn't the game plan, right? The game plan was betting on my strengths, which is I can't build Facebook and Twitter, right? I can't become a hedge fund this. What I can do is build brands. So long term, I'm gonna launch a bubble gum or a sneaker brand. I will build something that I will sell for multi-billions of dollars and then have a chance to do it. I've known this forever and I've been doing everything in my career towards it. Retail, now an agency that represents billion-dollar brands, and I'm eating crow. I have a service business. I hate clients, right? But I'm learning what I'm learning and I need to learn and I'm meeting the right people along the way. So Bill J, I think the way to really do stuff is to do the stuff you actually like to do. And everybody's tricking you along the way, including yourself, of all the other things you need to do. When you become whole and confident enough, like, this is just what I do, and this is the real brain, when you're okay with where it taps you out at, when you're like, cool, I'm only gonna make $300,000 a year, when you can get there, or 50, or 5 million, or whatever it may be, when you just can get cool with where you're at and what you're good at and what that leads itself to, a couple of funny things happen. You start saving a lot of time on other stuff, which allows you to play the game slightly different and opens up other opportunities that you would have never had. So I think, it's impossible for me to give you this, there's no tactic. This is not like do 10 sit-ups, right? You're asking me like, I know that I need to do sit-ups. How the hell do I get to do the sit-ups? The truth is, you don't do the sit-ups. You do something else. You run, right? You do push-ups. You do backflips in the pool. You do the that you want to do. And like, I really believe in that tremendously. Like, I'm terrible at anything that I don't want to do. And so is everybody else.
But I wanted to ask you, how do you balance? I know you have kids and a wife.
Yeah.
How do you balance your success with being a great father and a great husband?
Communication. So there is no answer to this question because every relationship is different, right? Like, there's theoretical questions, but the truth is the only answer, and I've been asked this question for 7 years now, and the question and the answer have evolved. And where I sit today at this moment, my answer to that question is firmly grounded in an answer that I don't think I will change, which is communication. The reason I'm able to do what I do is communication. It started on our first date. On mine and Lizzie's first date, I knew that I wanted to marry her. I called her after I dropped her off out of our first date, 3 minutes after our first date. Before she was fully in her apartment, I called her and I said, opening line, I said, can you believe this is it? Huh, like that's where I was at, right? And we were married within that year, right? And on our second date, 3 days later, I told her things like, you think I'm joking, but I want to buy the New York Jets, and you think, because you're only 23, that eventually we'll have a family and there'll be more life balance and I'll stop caring as much, and I will never not be this person. I know myself now and I'm not going to change. I'm hungry. Building businesses is my oxygen. This is who I am and you need to understand that. And if that's gonna be an issue at hand, then we need to talk about that. And it was communicated from the first date, second date, to now. I check in, like, I'm away this whole week, right? Like, because CES and this is insane. I mean, this is so rare for me to commit to anything on a Friday because I'm not gonna be home in time. I mean, I'm taking, I couldn't make the red eye work. Like, I'm gonna miss time tomorrow. And so, like, even though I'm coming off of 17-day vacation, the best time I have leverage in theory to take a whole week and not be home on a Saturday, I still over-communicated about that issue. And so I think communication, everybody has different things. I have a lot of young entrepreneurs and people around me, and I watch, and both sides. This is not a male. I mean, it's amazing what's going on with female entrepreneurs. Last 4 investments I've made, I have female entrepreneurs, and it's been fun for me to have the reverse question now of like, hey, do you think your husband's gonna be okay with you? You need to talk about you need to talk about being home at 2 o'clock in the morning every night. Is he gonna be cool with that? Like, it's both ways. Like, you have to be honest with yourself. You have to over communicate. Things evolve too. Things evolve, right? Like, you may be hungry as hell now, you may not later. Like, you just have to over communicate what your ambitions and what your wants are. If somebody truly loves you, they're gonna meet you halfway on what makes you the happiest. And so the way I do it is first through communication and second through extremism. What works for me is I work 8 o'clock in the morning to midnight. I mean, I don't get home into my apartment on a weekday, so let's call them 250 of them, right? I'm home out of the 250 weekdays if I'm in New York City. I walk into my apartment minimum 11 p.m. I'm meetings from 7 p.m. till midnight. I mean, you remember Nick, when Nick came out and did that live stream with us? Their crew, Renee's laughing.
We had some wine, we had some tequila, and then so we had a really good time, and it was just like, all right, we're like hanging with the CEO and this and that, and then all of a sudden, it was like, we hung out way past like what we're supposed to do together. It was super cool. And then all of a sudden it was like, all right guys, it's getting kind of late. It's 11 now, so let's get back to work. And they kept cranking, man. It was wild. It was crazy. The office was
they
still
were laughing,
half-packed.
right? Because we had like 4 people, but the book was coming. There was a lot going on. I was closing business. And like, we really had a meeting at 11 p.m. Lizzie's an incredible woman. Lizzie's very independent. My wife is very independent. She can make herself happy. She's in her own world. She's got her things that matter. Like, she's very she doesn't need me for her happiness. Lizzie also grew up with a successful dad in corporate America who didn't control his schedule and traveled a lot and was very successful. So there was a lot of reasons why it works for me, but it's specific to Lizzie and Gary. And I can't give that advice to everybody because, my best friend who runs Wine Library, his wife grew up with a dad that was home every day at 4:30. Every day at 4:30, and she struggles with Brandon coming home at 7 or 8 from Wine Library because that's just not what she's used to, and maybe he didn't do a good job communicating up front or whatever other variables within their relationship. And so I think it's communication, and it's ebb and flow, right? Like 2 years ago, like Lizzie was like, listen, I need you to travel a little less. I'm like, baby. She's like, listen. I'm like, all right, sorry. Like certain years, certain years take ebb and flows. And you know what the reaction to that was? I just doubled my speaking fee, which was great, right? It ended up being a great win, right? Like, I traveled less but made more, So, you just have to communicate. You have to check in. And if you're lucky enough to have what I have, which is really good EQ and you can feel it, when you feel like your partner isn't feeling right, you just need to attack it head on. Communication's the game for everything. It's how I build all my companies. Communication is the reason I have a happy life, because I'm uncomfortable in negativity and I address it immediately. I think when people talk about brand, like specifically when you're providing a service like you do and you're a human being, I always get this feeling like everybody's trying to figure out like which WWF wrestling character should I be, right? And I get like completely like I always want to take a step back, right? So everybody around me in the last 5 to 7 years, my handlers, my agents at CAA, my speaking, my all this, every one of them has asked me, stop talking like. This was the biggest conversation 3-4 years ago. Don't talk about wine and business and the Jets and cursing and all this. You're not a stand. Like they asked me to narrow what I was, right? They're like, you can't talk about wine and business and the Jets and this. Like you're confusing the market. I'm like, what are you talking about, right? Like there's this cookie cutter thought about branding that is so broken. my advice to you is to just be you, right? To not overthink what brand you're trying to be. This is, it's very easy for you to articulate what value you bring, right? That you provide entertainment in these events. You're good at it. You've done it for a long time. I think what you may be asking me, even subconsciously, is a slightly different question, which is, where is the opportunity market? And that's what I think is the differentiation that I'm trying to understand. Go ahead.
No, yeah, that's probably more of it. Like, there's some missed opportunities I've had with my brand in the past. Like,
what does that mean? Talk.
Well, with Facebook or
Okay.
with any social
Got
marketing and stuff. If I could start with a clean slate and have a better.
So you don't feel great about the stuff you've put out on those platforms?
Right.
You threw too many right hooks?
I feel like that, yeah. And so.
The best part is America loves the redemption. So just stop doing dumb and everybody will be pumped.
Perfect.
Do you know what I mean, though? I mean, just, by the way, there's a yang to the yin that I said earlier. Remember when I said you're not entitled to anything and like, you're only good as your last day? Well, it's kind of the cool thing about entrepreneurship. If you screwed it up for the last 7 years, just stop screwing it up and go forward and you'll see the results of the good thing. You know what I mean? I think that's really the way to look at it.